Does Fred Vasseur know something that Mercedes don't? Mercedes staff make it clear on who they are backing to be their winner in 2026. Leclerc spills the tea on George Russell's games in Japan. Horner to Audi hot up according to major news outlet, and Alonso is suggesting Aston Martin have a blueprint to turn things around before the end of the season. And what is expected from tomorrow's FIA meeting in London? We've got a lot to get into tonight. This is F1 Grandstand. I'm Tony Craig, and of course this is tonight's Formula One news. Get your words out, Tony. If you're a Formula One fan, of course you're in the right place. Do smash a like on the video if you're watching it right now. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and when you do subscribe, make sure you got the bell all icon ticked. That way you are in control of all the content you interact with. Hello chat, I can see plenty of you in there. We've got Drop Tuned, Reese Cup, Zedkev, Gemma Queen of the chat, Retro Man, F1 Fanatic, hello. Welcome to the chat. Harry Brown, Corinne, who else in there? Drop Tuned, Reese Cup. I hope I've got you all in. Got loads of you in there tonight. It's popping off. Sulo. Yeah, everyone's in. Eric's in there as well. Nice to have you all with us. So yes, it's been a glorious day here in the UK today. Sun's been out. Everyone's on a good vibe. And does Fred Vasseur know something that Mercedes don't? Well, this story is coming out from F1 Oversteer. And Frank Montanet, ex-Formula One driver from 2006, thinks he's pulled all the pieces together to work it all out. And he might be onto something. Let's get into it. And what do you think of our new graphic? Decided to put all the news stories on a little graphic at the start of the show. Tell me if you like it. Anyway, right, get into the first story. Fred Vasseur. Ferrari's comments suggest he knows something that Mercedes do not. Okay, let's get into it. Don't forget, if you want to get your super chats in, feel free. All super chats will be read out live on air, and I will try to get your chats as well, as many as I can. Okay, so Ferrari let's set the scene. Ferrari have begun the 26th season with an attitude that Frank Montanet has not seen for 10 years, and neither have I, actually. And he believes it should make their rival teams very, very worried. And when you get into it, I think you might agree with some of his logic here. So, Charles Leclerc, Lewis Hamilton, 3rd and 4th in the F1 Drivers' Championship. Very nice too. After 3 rounds, only behind Mercedes. Kimi Antonelli, P1, George Russell, P2. And also Ferrari sit just 44 points clear of McLaren in 3rd. So Ferrari are looking okay at this early stage of the season. Leclerc's even finished each of the first 3 Grand Prix inside the top 4. Hamilton got his first podium for Ferrari, finishing P3 in China. Very nice. But Montanet feels Ferrari are adopting an approach that suggests they may have found something their rivals have not. What could he be talking about? So Montanet, like I said, used to drive for Super Aguri F1 2006, and he has noticed that Ferrari, from team principal Fred Vasseur to Hamilton and Leclerc, they have not shown any doubts in 26. There's been no negativity really at all. In fact, if I had to pinpoint, the only slightly negative comments were from Hamilton in Japan after the race, where he felt that Leclerc's car didn't suffer from the battery problems that he had. But apart from that, everything's been pretty positive from the drivers, from Vasseur, from everybody, which is rare when we think about how Ferrari's been over the last few seasons. It's blame, finger pointing, problems, drama. Not at the moment. Fred Vasseur looks like he's got everything super calm. He's on top of everything, and he seems in pretty good shape, actually. And Vasseur stated that Ferrari feel Miami could be a different championship, because this 5-week break really plays into Ferrari's hands. What do we know about what Ferrari are up to? Well, they've got some air upgrades. You've got the Macarena wing. They've got the Halo wing. They've got a new engine map coming. If you believe Kimi Antonelli, they've already been awarded an additional upgrade opportunity to upgrade the hardware of their engine after race 6. And what all this leads to is that Ferrari know exactly what they're going to do to that engine at the earliest possible opportunity. So yes, they've got a new engine map, which they think is going to be worth at least a couple of tenths a lap, helping to reduce wasted energy, really. It's all about energy management and trying to reduce sort of wheel spin, trying to reduce just really moments of lap where they're just wasting energy. So a new engine map, a new rear wing, which is going to help them with their top speed problem compared to the extra power that Mercedes have got. Well, Ferrari are going to counter that with the Macarena wing, which is worth an extra 12 kilometers an hour down the straights. Plus, it helps with drag reduction, so also helps with energy management. So all these minor things are looking pretty good for Ferrari. And they've got at test day as well at Monza on the 21st of April this month, where they can really dial in all of these upgrades before Miami. And so when Fred uses terms like, oh, you know, it's going to be a different championship in Miami, he's factoring in the upgrades that Ferrari are bringing. He's factoring in the meetings with the FIA, which we'll come to later in the show, where they're going to make some significant changes, which will probably benefit Ferrari actually in quite a major way. So with all of this, Ferrari are looking pretty happy. But this is what Montani said via Formula1.it. This year, Ferrari are synonymous with serenity, calm reigns, both regarding the battles on the track and the changes. Whether they work or not, they don't mind. And I think he's right. There is this serenity around it. I mean, Fred Vasseurs letting these drivers go wheel to wheel and race each other with just like, hey, we trust our drivers. Yes, they can be millimeters away from each other, but we trust our drivers. Like, he's just so calm about it all. The drivers are positive, aware and calm, and also have enjoyed their racing, and they've been very respectful with each other. It's been good, clean racing. There've been aggressive moments where maybe you could argue Hamilton or Leclerc didn't really leave the correct amount of room for each other, but all in all, good, clean, aggressive racing. And they believe in the process. For me, Ferrari are the only team that doesn't seem to show any doubts. And that's why they are the only team that worries me. They've understood something that we haven't. Why are they so calm? Well, Art of War. Why are people in battle calm? Because they know, we know what we've got in the locker. In the first three Grand Prix, this is what it goes on to say, in the first three Grand Prix, there hasn't been a single discordant note in their comments. And it's the first time in the last 10 years that I felt Ferrari so calm. If I were in another team, I'd be really worried. And I'd ask myself, have Ferrari found something? And, you know, I do agree with him. Because we can only look at past performance indicating future results. And past performance from Ferrari has been very, you know, they've been negative comments, aggression, blame culture, a team that looks like it's in fractions, arguing with each other. But this year, we don't see that. We've not heard a peep from John Elkann, have we? Chairman of Ferrari. He likes to step in if things aren't too great, giving his 2 pennies worth. And we've not seen any of it. And then if you believe Kimi Antonelli, who says Ferrari have already been awarded an additional upgrade opportunity, everything looks pretty damn rosy. And I'm interested to know your thoughts. The big question is, do you think Ferrari have got it all together? Do you think Ferrari have got like something in the locker that the other teams don't know about? Could it be a regulation change? Or could it be that they know exactly what that additional upgrade opportunity for the engine is going to be? They've already worked it out. They've already gone, we know what to do here. We know how to close this gap on power. And we also don't need to do anything with our turbo because that's working great. We're getting great starts. We're fabulous through the corners. The chassis is working well. And do you think they know how to get that extra power? I kind of think they do. And I'm going to go to your super chats. Gisette says, if Hamilton and his new engineer click victory. Exactly. That's the other very good point, Gisette. Great super chat. I didn't even mention it. Don't forget Hamilton's coming into Miami with his permanent race engineer. Grosjean has now finished his gardening leave. He's allowed to take his position. He's been on the pit wall watching what's going on, probably learning from Carlo Santi. And yeah, that's a very good point. That relationship can start blossoming, and that's going to be a benefit to Hamilton. Good point, Gisette. Love that. Gemma says, Corporate yoga classes, Lewis Guru meditating. Lewis has been a different Lewis this year. Like, Leclerc is always a very cool cucumber, I think. Last year, we saw a few cracks in his post-race interviews where it was hard for him to really stay on the Ferrari PR train when it just was awful. It wasn't going well. And we saw a few kind of digs. He wasn't telling any lies. He was just telling the truth. And Ferrari, the one thing Ferrari don't like is you telling the truth if the truth is not great. So, but Leclerc did toe the party line most of the time. Hamilton obviously was more vocal. Then we had real life upset Fred Vasseur, engineers arguing with him in front of the public at Silverstone, real fractious with real fractions within the engineering and the teams. Then you had John Elkin saying the drivers should shut up and drive, and the whole thing was just horrible, just awful. Then Fred came out and said, well, I'm going to take all the blame for that. And I think that was a good thing that he did. Because when you think about creating a harmonious team, and as team leader, you want to say, look, yeah, the team had problems last year, but I want to take some of the blame off them and put it onto my shoulders. And this is what he did. He said, the problems that we had last year are my fault. I made the decision to focus on the 26 car, which meant I knew the 25 car was never really going to be competitive. I knew that the car was going to be awful. There's nothing really we could do for Hamilton at this point. Charles Leclerc's just going to have to wrestle with the car. Hamilton's going to just come into a new team and not really have any upgrades. Nothing's really going to change for him. And he goes, I'll take the blame for that. I could have put resources onto the 25 car like Red Bull did to try and help Max Verstappen win the World Driver Championship, which he didn't in the end. And now we're seeing the consequences of those actions where they've got a 26 car which is just not competitive at all and slip right down the competitive grid down to mediocrity in the midfield. So, but Fred Vasseur got out in front of that story, didn't he? Even before we'd seen the 26 car, Fred Vasseur came out and said that. So I think what happens then is now he's going, look, all the spotlight's on my decision. And really, it ramped up the pressure on Fred to deliver a strong Ferrari in 26. And if he hadn't have delivered a strong Ferrari for the first three races, I think Fred, as I've reported, his neck was well and truly on the chopping block. But the fact that he got out in front of it and put himself in that position, and the car now looks good, for Fred, he's had this massive swing. And I think the Tifosi are behind him. I think the team are behind him. I think the drivers are behind him. I think John Elkan's probably behind him. And even if it's a reprieve rather than a full support, it's like, okay, you've got a reprieve till the end of the season. Let's see what you can do with what you've got. I don't know. I think that might be part of it. Gisette says, the culture has changed. Totally agree, Gisette. And now, as a whole, they believe they have a winning team. I totally agree. Leclerc, it's like the James Bond of F1 too. He is. I love Leclerc. He is a cool cucumber, isn't he? Great super chat, Gisette. I couldn't agree more with all of your statements and sentiments in that one. Absolutely true. And I think we see this absolute dynamic shift from what we saw last year. So yeah, I think so. I do think so. Oh, Gemma, hang on a minute. I just see Gemma said I've missed a super chat. Hang on. I've done your corporate yoga. Oh, yeah, you did. Wings for days. Someone's drinking the Red Bull Kool-Aid. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's Ferrari. Ferrari have got wings on wings on wings, right? Thank you. Thanks, Gemma, for your super chat. Sorry, a bit delayed. But yeah, Ferrari are bringing wings on wings on wings to Miami and a new engine map. So they've got the little wing that sits on the stem of the halo. Then they've got the halo wing that sits on top of the halo as part of the structure. Then they've got the exhaust flap wing, which no one else can copy without redesigning the entire rear of the car. Only Haas have copied it because they're using Ferrari's same rear end. And yeah, they've got the Macarena wing. So they are going with aero solutions. But we have to say, name a car that's better through the corners than the Ferrari. I don't think there is one. Maybe McLaren showed big gains in Japan, but they had stability issues, and they have got a car with a mind of its own issues. Managing the energy deployment in the McLaren looks like it's a challenge at the moment, with Lando Norris getting energy deployment when he doesn't need it, doesn't want it. So yeah, I think Ferrari are looking very, very cool. And I think I'm looking forward to Miami. And on the Ferrari story, I've got a funny one from Charles Leclerc coming up after the next story tonight, which is Mercedes. What's going on? So let me get into this. And thank you so much for your input on that story. So this is Mercedes. Staff do not see George Russell as the 26th title favourite, as Kimi Antonelli is making a difference. Ooh, George Russell, can you imagine what he's doing right now? This is the year that George Russell, senior driver in Formula One, ex-president of the British Drivers, the Racing Drivers Association, literally school monitor prefect himself. This is my year. Mercedes are giving me a car. This is it. This is my world championship year. That was a story. Well, check this out. Mercedes staff have got different ideas on that story. So Mercedes do not think George Russell is more likely to win the 26th F1 drivers title than Kimi Antonelli, after noticing where the Italian can make a difference. And this is really interesting. There is some tangible evidence that Kimi Antonelli is getting more performance out of the Mercedes than George under certain circumstances. Excuse me. Now, we all know Russell was widely regarded as the title favourite. Lando Norris even said it. Everyone said it. This is George's year. Yeah, Antonelli tops the F1 driver standing at the moment. He's got, after 3 rounds, he's got a 9-point lead over George Russell. Obviously, George Russell won the Australian Grand Prix and the sprint in China. And then Kimi Antonelli gets pole. Then Kimi Antonelli gets pole in China, wins the Grand Prix in China, then gets pole in Japan and wins in Japan. So obviously Russell won the Australian Grand Prix, the first Grand Prix of the season. So, and I know what you're going to say, before you say it, Kimi Antonelli was helped by the safety car. Yes, but there's always going to be incidents in Formula One where we don't know what's going to happen with the safety cars, incidents that can happen at pit stops, contacts, crashes, collisions, mistakes. So yes, he did benefit from that situation. But he did put the car on pole. He had a terrible start, dropped down to 6th. But he was fighting back. So look, yes, did he benefit from the safety car? Of course he did. Came out at the perfect time for him. He got a cheap pit stop, retained track position. Of course, that was all brilliant. Russell had a problem with his car. He had a bug in the software. Look, all the excuses under the sun. But still, Kimi Antonelli is still doing the business, and you can't argue with that. So according to Formula Technica, Antonelli's recent results also showed that he can make the difference compared to Russell on harder Pirelli tyre compounds. Pirelli moved from the softest compounds in Australia, C3 to C5, to the C2 to C4. And in China, the C1 to C3 in Japan as well. So Antonelli proved in China and Japan that he can deliver on the harder tyre compounds to maximise their performance without pushing their operating window. Russell struggled in the Mercedes, and he found it was less predictable with less grip. Now, why is that such an important thing to notice? Well, for the start, all three, look at the Grand Prix, they're all one-stop strategies, which means hard tyres, majority of the Grand Prix, you're going to be on the hard tyre. So the fact that Kimi Antonelli is able to make the hard tyre work better than Russell in the Mercedes is a huge advantage. Now, what is he doing? How is he doing it? Is it smoother driving style? I would say yes. He is driving the car smoother, quicker, less wear on the tyres. He's finding that sweet spot. But to be able to get more out of the harder tyre, we saw it in Vegas last year. Kimi Antonelli did, what was it, an obscene amount of laps on the hard tyre in Vegas. Was it 47, 49 laps? And that is going to play into this championship. Because a Grand Prix is won over 72 laps, or 50 to 72 laps. You know, you've got to be able to do the long stints. But Kimi Antonelli's also shown us he's quick over a lap as well. Back-to-back poles, and George Russell can bring out all the excuses he wants. It was still back-to-back poles for Antonelli. So, of course, the Mercedes camp are going, we're not backing one driver here. Antonelli looks like he's Well, he's winning the World Drivers' Championship, so right now you got to say he's favourite. He's in front. He's 9 points in front. And if George Russell gets a DNF, a mistake, and Kimi Antonelli gets another race win, it'll be 34 points in front. You know, at that point, you got to be thinking the pressure is mounting. And if you're George Russell and you're the favourite, and this is supposed to be your season, yet your rookie number 2 driver is all of a sudden found a higher gear, how is George going to respond to this pressure? And then the team are basically publicly saying, no, even though you're our highest paid driver, by some margin, by the way, Russell's getting paid between 25 and 30 million a year, and Kimi Antonelli's on about 2 million a year, maybe 2.5 million a year. So you could argue George Russell's on 10 times as much as Kimi Antonelli, but that doesn't mean that the team are going to go just because you're getting paid more, you're our driver. No, they're letting them race. And I think Toto Wolff's like, yeah, come on, Kimi, put his arm around it, come on, Kimi. You know, and I think George Russell's going to be feeling all the pressure, and we haven't seen how George Russell can respond. I'm going to get to super chats. Auxilla, yes, Auxilla. Welcome to the chat with a big super chat. I've got a cheeky bet on Kimi taking the championship. Auxilla, I'm not going to lie. I've got a cheeky bet on Kimi Antonelli taking the championship as well. And here's the thing, Auxilla, on that. It's not silly. It's not a silly bet, because George Russell he's never had a car that he believes can win a world title. That's the first thing. He's never, and when he did have a better car, he had Hamilton to contend with, right, as well. So now George Russell's found his vein of form, and I would say he's become sort of a complete driver. Last year, I felt he was becoming a complete F1 driver. And it takes 5 or 6 years to get there for most drivers. Now, I don't know. Like, I don't know how George responds to this. I don't know how he responds to the pressure. I don't know how he responds to being, in his head, the number 1 driver and being behind his teammate. Because the problem he's got is Formula 1 is a confidence business. Right? I'm sure we agree on that. It's about talent and ability, but you're talking about fine margins. And those fine margins, as we saw with Oscar Piastri, the devastating aspect of losing confidence can mean mistakes. And it just feels like, why am I getting all this bad luck? Well, your lack of confidence, you are bringing that bad luck on you. And even when it comes to mechanical failures or, incidents where by other drivers who seem to, connect with you in a pack where you then lose a front wing, and it's like, why is this happening to me? It's like the negativity starts growing, and then you go from being riding that crest of a wave of confidence to being in a negative spiral. Now, the reverse is also true. You're Kimi Antonelli with no pressure on you at all. You just expect to be close enough to George Russell, do a good performance, get some podiums, keep scoring points, finish in the top 5 every race, even if Russell's winning them. You're there or thereabouts, and you're doing okay. You're keeping your seat. But now Kimi Antonelli's got back-to-back poles, back-to-back wins. What do you think that's done for him? All of a sudden, he believes. Now, he genuinely believes, I could win the World Driver Championship this year. And at the start of the season, he might have said he believes it, but you don't know. But now he's had a couple of race results like that. He's going to... That's got to be worth a 10th or 2 per lap. And that's what we're seeing right now. So if George Russell gets into a negative spiral, I actually think it's a great bet, Kimi Antonelli. But great super chat. Love that, Auxilla. Great bet. Brilliant. That's a good one, actually. If you had any bets this year, tell me what they are in the chat window. I'll just say check I've not missed anyone else's super chats. Gisette, Russell needs to use it as fuel and grab it. That's what you'd want him to do. But I don't know. I honestly don't know about Russell's mental strength, honestly. It takes a lot. Like, Piastri's a good example. I was backing Piastri last year. I was like, Piastri, 34 points in the lead. I'm thinking, and also, he looked great. And he was Iceman. until Baku. Well, actually, until he had to give the place back in Monza. The team orders and all the negativity start creeping in, and he's thinking, oh, has the team gone against me, right? Are the team working against me? They want Lando Norris and all this stuff, and then the press and the media start talking about it, all seeps in, and then we see this, he falls, his form drops. I don't know, I just don't know whether George Russell's got it in him. I mean, I like to think he has. I want to, keep it honest, keep the racing good. Gisette also says Ferrari also isn't leaking like Aston Martin. Fred's a leader. That's true. Do you know what? That's true. What's happening at Ferrari now is they've closed ranks and they're all on the same page. And I tell you what, though, I've got a really interesting story coming up tonight. Fernando Alonso thinks that Aston Martin have got a blueprint to turn it all around by the end of the season. I'll be coming to that a little bit later. So yeah, I think it's fascinating that Mercedes themselves are saying this. That's what I do. Then we've got Auxilla says, George definitely is being forged by fire this season as most champions go through. And I think that is very blooming poignant, Auxilla, because what Auxilla's saying there is, this really is it, isn't it? The fact that this championship isn't just a given to George Russell, the fact that now his biggest threat is the young pretender Kimi Antonelli, it's like, if you can't win under these circumstances, George, the truth is, you're never going to win it. And the fact that it's not a gimme, like it's just a definite, and the fact that you're being challenged and you're going to have to bring your A game to, one, put Kimi Antonelli in his place, two, show the world that you deserve to be a world champion, because not just because you've got the best car, but you've got the mental strength to deal with the pressure you've got now from Kimi Antonelli and the coming pressure from Ferrari, which is bound to come in the next few Grand Prix, certainly after they get their additional upgrade opportunity. Like, it shouldn't be easy, should it? It's like anything that's easy doesn't have the same value. If you win a world championship by a point, Kimi Raikkonen springs to mind, 2007, when it was Kimi Raikkonen, Lewis Hamilton and Fernando Alonso, and you win by a point, you're going to feel you've earned it. If you're so far out in front, and it's easy because you happen to have the best car, and also you happen to be a lot better than your teammate, well then, you're feeling like the car's done all the work. So yes, he has to be, if he wins it, he has to earn it. And I like that. And if he doesn't win it, Auxilla, then it means that, well, it's now or never. And Forged by Fire's right. He's either going to melt, right, and he's going to become a melt and he's going to fail, or he's going to be hardened, strengthened steel, and we're going to see a different side of George Russell, and he's going to bring the fight. I don't know which. Is he aluminium? Is he going to melt? Or is he going to be steel and be forged by that fire and come back stronger, better, and win it and rip it out of the talons of everybody else? And that's what we need to see. But thank you, Auxilla. Great super chat. But time will tell. I think time will tell. Gemma says, I didn't see George do an interview after the last race or supporting Kimi. He had a strop, a sulk. How he manages the losses will be interesting. That's a good point. That is a good point. He was nowhere to be seen congratulating Kimi Antonelli after his win. Now, look, he's not the first driver to go off and sulk, especially when he feels like there was something wrong with the car. But yeah, it's a very good point that. He disappeared. He hid away. He wasn't in the media pen doing interviews. He was obviously feeling pretty peed off and probably feels like, because you got to remember, he couldn't pass Charles Leclerc either. George Russell was on the gearbox of Charles Leclerc in Japan. He could have got a podium. He couldn't get past Leclerc. Again, we were told there's a bug in his system, there's something wrong with his car, and we have to take that as a real reason. But yeah, that it shows what it really shows. The fact that you couldn't come out and go, great result from a teammate. Kimi was brilliant. Took all of his opportunities, won the race fair and square. Brilliant drive by Kimi. And in fact, he was getting in himself. The pressure's building. It could be a telltale sign, Gemma. It could. Good point. Gisette says, Kimi's got the momentum. Does he have the toughness? It'll be interesting that, because people still... I think that's true. Like Kimi Antonelli, he sort of takes things in his stride. And the one thing I would say is, when we talk about going back to Auxilla's comment about being forged in fire, last season, Kimi Antonelli dropped off the face of a cliff with his performance. After Canada, he got a podium, and then midpoint of the season, he just dropped off. The summer break couldn't have come quick enough for him. He was really not anywhere close to George Russell. George Russell's extracting the maximum out of the car, and Kimi Antonelli just wasn't close enough. He'd had a confidence crisis. The media turned on him. Everyone's saying, why has he got to drive really? Was it too soon to put him in a top team car? You know, Toto Wolff was even saying, yeah, you know, he needs to improve. And all this pressure was building on him. And then last 5 races of the season, he came out the other side. So I would say that's an early indication of Kimi Antonelli's toughness. I feel that he's shown already. He's shown already that he does have that grit, right? Even though he's like a smiling youngster just enjoying things, he was under real pressure from the externally and internally. The press was saying this, that, and the other. Plus, there was the talk of Max Verstappen coming to Mercedes. Plus, Toto Wolff kept it real late in the season before he secured Kimi Antonelli's future. And that was exactly when Kimi Antonelli started to improve. When Toto Wolff gave Kimi Antonelli's contract for the 26th season, we saw Kimi Antonelli improve. So he had all of that going on. So I do think that Kimi Antonelli's shown some toughness, I would say. So yeah, it looks good. Auxilla says, I believe Bono can pull Kimi over the finish line. You shouldn't... Exactly! Let's not forget who's in Kimi Antonelli's corner. Pete Bonington. Probably the greatest race engineer there is. Maybe even better than Lambiase. He was there through the dark time last year. And Kimi Antonelli said the impact that Bono had, helping him through that time. And yeah, and now with the reliance from driver has on race engineer, you cannot underestimate how important Pete Bonington is to Kimi Antonelli. And it's a very, very good point. That's probably actually, Auxilla, was one of the major factors on why Kimi Antonelli got through last season and why he could get through this season, 26. Great point. And I think Kimi Antonelli will be the first one to say, if he does manage to pull off a World Driver Championship, I think the first person he goes to give a massive cuddle to is going to be Pete Bonington. Yeah, absolutely true. Brilliant. Yeah, because you can't really underestimate how important that race engineer relationship is. Gemma says, that's no coincidence Bono is his race engineer. Well, Bono and Lewis Hamilton were also a perfect partnership. He's excellent. Excellent. Right. Let's get on to the next story. It's a good one. This is a funny one. I think you'll like this. So we've got Charles Leclerc giving us a little insight into the games George Russell and Mercedes were playing in Japan. So he says George Russell's Mercedes engineer was being quite cheeky during the Japanese Grand Prix. So Leclerc revealed Mercedes employed a unique strategy as George Russell tried to throw him off during the Japanese Grand Prix. Obviously, Leclerc managed P3. George Russell was all over his gearbox, but didn't manage to get an overtake done. He fended off George Russell actually multiple times towards the end of the Grand Prix. So this is what he said. George Russell and Mercedes were choosing to play mind games with Leclerc and his Ferrari race engineer. And this is exactly what Leclerc said. So Leclerc revealed that Russell and his engineer intentionally misrepresented their strategy to confuse Ferrari. And while he didn't fall for it, his laps near the end almost cost him the race. So this is what he said. George Russell, his engineer, were also being quite cheeky. His engineer was telling him things on the radio, and then my engineer was telling me what George's engineer was telling him. But then George was doing the exact opposite of the information he's getting from his race engineer. That put me into quite a bit of pressure at one point. I think they told me, he's being told to use everything on the back straight or maybe on the main straight. And he was doing the opposite of that. So I understood pretty quickly and could defend. But at one point, I got surprised in the last corner. And so what I find fascinating about this is we've heard some of the conversations between race engineer and driver. And they're asking for information, Max Verstappen, especially from Lambiase, asking for information of how to go through around the track. But George Russell, they were using code. Listen, it didn't take Sherlock Holmes to work out what the code is. It's basically, we're doing opposites. If I tell you to use all your power, all your battery on the main straight, don't use your battery on the main straight, right? So whatever code they were saying. But it just goes to show what's going on in Formula One right now. Because it's so complicated to get a car around a lap optimally that if you look at Max Verstappen, he wants the exact information. Am I lifting, coasting, clipping, boosting, overtake mode? Should we 98% throttle, 100% throttle, 95% throttle? Am I flat out of this corner, that corner? Like literally every decision the driver needs to make in a lap, he's checking with his race engineer. So if you then factor in, we're going to use codes, Max Verstappen couldn't do it, but George Russell was doing that. So Charles Leclerc was saying that's what was going on. And I think it gives us an idea of like just how different teams operate. So yeah, George Russell was using the, hey, if we say this, do the opposite. And he also, Charles Leclerc, I'll just add this in, what he said about the gap between Ferrari and Mercedes. He said this, he said, I don't regret much. I think it was a good race. And as far as what we've seen today compared to Mercedes, I don't think we're that far behind them. But they still have an advantage. But it's up to us to try and change the situation. And I think Ferrari feel that the gap between them is closing. And I also feel, don't forget the story we had on a show last week where Ferrari were asking for the FIA to clarify about qualifying because Mercedes were using a trick where during their hot lap in qualifying, they were using emergency mode, which allowed them to get maximum power from the battery in a very linear fashion. Full power, and then the battery drops off the edge of, then there's no power. And that was emergency mode, which is supposed to be to help, for emergencies, but Mercedes were using it in qualifying because the punishment for using emergency mode is you don't have any battery available for 60 seconds. But in qualifying, obviously on a hot lap, it doesn't matter. You've done your hot lap, you're cooling the car down. It doesn't matter if you've got no battery for 60 seconds afterwards. And Mercedes were exploiting that in qualifying. So the true gap between Ferrari and Mercedes in qualifying, which we thought was maybe 8/10, could be a lot less. Anyway, so when you factor all this stuff in and what Ferrari thinks coming in Miami, I don't think the gap between Ferrari and Mercedes is anywhere near as big as it was at the start of the season. And I think Charles Leclerc feels the same way. I think Fred Vasseur feels the same way. I think Lewis Hamilton feels the same way. But yeah, I'm just going to quickly make sure I've not missed any of your chats. Retroman says, I'm becoming an NLS fan. Nice, real racing. It's going to get better. Don't you worry, we've got discussions happening with the FIA. The racing will get better, I'm sure of it. Will it be what we want? I don't know. Is it going to improve? I'm sure it will. I'm sure it will. Eric, poll. Okay, I'll do a quick poll, actually. And it's on my last story. And it's a quick one. Who will finish... I'm not even going to say win. Finish higher in WDC. And it's going to be... This is really... I should have done this before. Russell or Antonelli. No T-Rex. Start poll. So it's a poll I should have done on the last story, actually. Who will finish higher in the World Driver Championship? Russell or Antonelli? I'm interested to know what your thoughts are on that. Because let's take the temperature of the room. Let's see if Auxilla's gonna, if you're backing his bet for Kimi Antonelli to win the WDC. Right. Okay, next story. Oh yes, this is a good one. Christian Horner may now seriously consider joining Audi due to Toto Wolff and Mercedes. So the story's hotting up about Audi's interest in Christian Horner. And they're also linking it in, obviously, to Horner's position with buying the Otro Capital shares at Alpine. Mercedes look like they're throwing a spanner in the works. But it's more than that. There's reports coming out from Formula Technica about Audi's position, which also links into what Matteo Binotto's been saying. A lot to talk about. Let's get into it. So Audi have now marked Christian Horner as their ideal team principal target to replace Wheatley with his gardening leave after being fired by Red Bull almost after his gardening leave after his Red Bull contract is nearly over. So obviously Red Bull sacked Horner in July after the Silverstone Grand Prix, after 20 years of it being in charge, and he got his payoff quite happily, negotiated his severance package to get reduced gardening leave. All the rumours about Horner, it looked like a nailed-on deal for Alpine to buy the 24% from Otro Capital and become an owner/team principal over at Alpine. Mercedes at the 11th hour gone, hey, we'd quite like those shares. We already supply with engines. Maybe we should invest in Alpine. Horner then like, what am I going to do? So I think Audi think Horner's sort of gettable. Now, it's a bit of a game of musical chairs, isn't it? Horner wants back in to Formula One, but he wants some equity and some ownership. Now, when you think of it like this, when Aston Martin brought in Adrian Newey got 5% stake in Aston Martin. That's not to be sniffed at. A 5% stake in a racing team worth 300 billion. So not worth say 3 billion. It's a lot, isn't it? 5%. Would that be enough for Horner? But the interesting thing is, according to Formula Technica, reports that top Audi bosses see Horner as the ideal candidate to restore order in the team. Audi believe they urgently need a figure who can oversee a long-term vision with effective management, which Horner would deliver. Audi also do not think Horner's arrival would clash with F1 project lead Matteo Binotto, as he wants to focus on the race team rather than political matters. The greatest problem for Audi would be that Horner is desperate to return as a stakeholder in the team that he joins. But is this a problem? There's two problems, which I'll come back to in a minute. The first thing that you need to know is Audi have already sold some shares in their team. They sold a 30% stake to Qatar Investment Authority, QIA, back in November 2024. So it's not like Audi is saying, look, we're not going to sell, shares aren't up for grabs. It just remains to see, well, how many shares would it take for Horner to go, I want to be a partner? I mean, like I said, Horner knew he got 5% of the Aston Martin race team. I think Horner wants more like a 20% stake. Audi would want to keep controlling interest. So really, the maximum that could be available might be 15%, something like that. Would that be enough? If Horner could get a 15% stake in Audi's team, with all of the benefits of being an owner at Audi, and what I mean by that is, Audi have got deep, deep pockets. They've got resources. They've got know-how. They've got expertise. They've got two good drivers. Like, Horner might look at that team, and they're already in the midfield. It's not like he's taking a team from the back and going like when he took over Jaguar for Red Bull. They've actually got a pretty decent chance of progressing Audi. The platform is pretty solid. The engine looks pretty bulletproof so far, and there will be more upgrade opportunities. For Horner, you might be thinking, I can do something here. Same way he thought if I could do something at Alpine, he's probably thinking I can do something here. The ambition that Audi have to be world champions by 2030 would match Horner's ambitions. So all that looks pretty possible, actually. But the big thing we take away from this update is, if you're to believe the news outlet, Audi want Horner. Now, they mentioned Matteo Binotto. We did a show just this week where Matteo Binotto publicly said, we don't need a team principal. I just need someone to support me. So Binotto is basically saying, I'll quite happily take this land grab. Wheatley's out. I'll become team principal as well as COO. I will run the team. I will just have somebody acting as a support role to support me in that. He wants all the power. Binotto doesn't have an equity stake in the team. So this is where things change. Binotto, who sort of stripped Wheatley of his roles and responsibilities, like diluted them, so Wheatley was team principal, but seemed to really have to answer to Binotto. Well, now, if Audi decide Horner's more valuable than you, Binotto, he's now an owner of the team, it doesn't matter how you share those duties, Binotto's going to have to answer to one of the partners, which would be Horner. So then Binotto starts slightly getting his power stripped back. So it could be an interesting dynamic, that, if it goes through. Will it? I don't know. How much I believe that it's possible, I don't know. I really don't know. But I think Horner's got to look for other options. And if I'm Horner, I'd say Audi's a pretty decent one. I'm going to try and catch some of your super chats as they're flying through. Jim says, now I can blow the lid off a lot of things. I can tell you all dead straight, after working for a team for two, about 60% of journalist headlines stories are totally false, untrue, and complete fiction. I mean, yeah, that's true. I mean, there's a lot of news that comes out that's hot air. But what we do as a community is we discuss what's come out on the day, and we try and discuss between us whether how much credit we give it. Do we think it's BS? Do we think it's viable? Do we think we're joining up dots here? But I actually think this Audi one, I feel like it could be an option. I feel like there could be some merit in it. No, I do. That's what I think. So yeah, that's what I think about that particular story. But let me know what you think. I'll give you a quick update on our current poll. Who will finish higher in the World Driver Championship? Russell or Antonelli? 64% of you, 66% of you are saying Antonelli. Good news for Auxilla. And 34% of you are saying George Russell. That's crazy. If you're George Russell and you're watching the show right now, all this is going to be adding pressure to him for sure. Corinne says, right now I'd put my money on Audi. What's this for? Oh, who will get a first podium? Eric says, who will get a podium first? Audi or Aston Martin? Audi! Right now, Audi. But like, you have led me nicely onto my next story, which is Fernando Alonso. Because Alonso thinks he's come out with some positive PR again. Who would have thunk it? Fernando Alonso suggested Aston Martin is currently in a position McLaren was in 2023 and believes there's huge potential to come from his team. What's he talking about? He's looking at this McLaren blueprint. This is what he said. He pointed to the example of McLaren, the Constructors' champions of 24 and 25, who were still suffering Q1 knockouts on occasion during 23, and suggested that the second half of this season could look very different. And this is what he said. I think in a couple of months to the timeline back to competitiveness. A couple of months? That's ambitious. And this is what he said. We saw the McLaren in 23. They were last in the first couple of races, and they eventually were at the front at the end of the year. Maybe that's too optimistic, but that's our dream scenario. But in a way, we know that the season is long, and if you understand the problems, you fix them. You have plenty of time to do the second part of the year, or the last third of the championship in a much better position. That's what we are working on now. He also said he's confident there's a lot of performance to unlock in the AMR 26. Definitely a very, very huge potential in the car and in the engine, he said. I think we've made progress since Bahrain in terms of deployment, in terms of understanding some of the drivability issues. Now we're in a much better position. We still need to fix vibrations, but actually I think they have got a solution for that for Miami. We still need to fix the power deficit. They are fundamental things that are still on the back foot. But it's not that, they're all watching TV right now. They're working flat out. So we just need time, and we need to be patient here on track, because while the factory is bringing the upgrades, we need to keep working and racing every weekend with a package that is maybe not the best or not competitive. And this was what I thought was really interesting about he talks about the upgrades. He said the purpose of the upgrades at this point isn't with the intent of performance, but rather in ensuring that the team understands everything about its package. This is what he said. Zero performance, he said, because the upgrades are just a small thing that we are testing on the car to understand if we think is the problem. So when we test those upgrades, they tell us if we are in the right direction or not in the factory. But it's not that it's bringing performance. It's just bringing direction. So yeah, everything is working as expected. In the factory, there's lots of things going on and they look very positive. Some of the things that we are testing, there is an idea, then you need to wind tunnel, then you need to CFD, then you need to make it into production and you need to bring it to the track. And then you're in July and August. So he's being quite honest about that. But what I think fascinating is it tells us just where Aston Martin are at. They're not bringing performance upgrades to try and win races or even get points. They're bringing upgrades to tell us, is this really the problem? Is this the thing we actually need to fix? So it shows you how far behind they are. But once they find the correct direction, we're going to see, according to Fernando Alonso, huge leaps in performance. But right now, any upgrade they're bringing is, are we on the right lines? Is this really the problem that we're trying to solve? And I thought that was a fascinating insight into where Aston Martin are. But the other thing that I think is fascinating is Fernando Alonso hasn't lost his mind with, criticisms and slagging off Honda, saying they're awful. He's coming with the positive message at all times. What's happened to the old Fernando Alonso? He's like bringing the positive PR. And Wiz says, I think Alonso's been knocking back the San Miguel. Can't see Aston Martin being any good this season. I have to say I agree. If they are scoring points by the end of the season, fair play. I mean, then yeah, I'll be surprised. I don't think Aston Martin are going to be anywhere near the front this season. But with a new regulation cycle, year 2, 27, yeah. I think we could see a different Aston Martin. But yeah, Fernando, super positive. And our final story tonight is, as you know, big things happening with the FIA. What to expect from Formula One Power Unit rules talks on Thursday. Listen, the headline is, don't get bloody excited. This is what we think is going to happen tomorrow. On Thursday, a technical meeting is scheduled in London to formally discuss various proposals that have been floated around in the paddock on how to refine the energy deployment regulations to improve both the show and F1's authenticity. The main driver of tomorrow's talks has been the resentment amongst all the F1 drivers and with the diehard fans of how the current iteration of the 26 power unit regulations are affecting qualifying. It's not just qualifying, it's the race as well. It's generally how battery management is affecting Formula One. It's not just qualifying. They want you to think it's just qualifying because the drivers need to be able to push the car to the ragged edge and not artificially be slowed down. It's not just qualifying. Look, let's be honest. It's the racing as well. But they want to keep the overtakes. I understand that. But also, it's the same problem, battery management. Because qualifying is supposed to be an outright test of driver skill and machinery. But right now, qualifying seems to be more about machinery than driver skill. Algorithms. Bloody algorithms. How can there be algorithms involved? Like, they shouldn't be in a Formula One car. Anything that sits between the driver's input and the car's output, i.e. algorithms, shouldn't be allowed. And that's a whole different debate. That's catching fire. If you watched last night's show, you'll see I had a little rant, or was it the night before? But this week, it's all about are Formula One drivers driving alone and unaided with the current regulations. I think the argument's clear. I don't think they are. But that's a whole different show. We've already done it. Check it out. It'll come back though. So the main agenda is how to formulate tweaks to the energy equation in qualifying and bring driver skill and enjoyment back to the fore, perhaps by reducing the electrical engine energy component or changing how and when the battery can be charged. So yes, just to be clear what to expect, Thursday's discussion is just the first of a series of meetings between now and the Miami Grand Prix, 1st to the 3rd of May. And it's understood no imminent change or decision is expected to come out of it tomorrow. What they want is to propose tweaks. Those will then be discussed at a follow-up meeting on the 20th of April, which will also involve F1 chiefs and the teams themselves, which will be followed by an e-vote. Resulting refinements will then be trialled from the Miami Grand Prix onwards, and data gathered over the subsequent series of race weekends will then be analysed in case another pass of the sporting regulations has to be made over the summer break. So all of that information tells us what? Tomorrow, they're all going to be throwing suggestions. All of this shit's going to get talked about. Are we going to get any outcome? Absolutely bloody not. We're not. We're not going to get an outcome. It's the start of the conversations. The drivers will have their say. The team principals have their say. The power unit manufacturers have their say. The FIA will push back on all of it. Again, with the safety issue of what happened with Ollie Behrman's crash. I'll tell you right now, the FIA do not want to change anything to do with the racing during the Grand Prix. They don't. But will there be some sort of compromise? The FIA do not want to change things. They want to tick the safety box. They want to keep the racing, the overtakes, and they want to do the bare minimum. The drivers are pushing back hard. The team principals are pushing back hard from a safety point of view. And what the FIA will do, I honestly don't know. They've been asking to get, to increase the recharge rate from 250 watts to 340 watts under super clipping. Will they do that? Maybe. I don't know. But what they have acquiesced to do is say, yes, we need to sort out qualifying. We agree with that. We know all the fans want that and all the drivers want that. So I don't know what they're going to come back with. We're not going to get a resolution tomorrow. We might get some sort of feedback of how the initial conversations went, but do not expect more than that tomorrow. But that's basically it. Let me resolve tonight's. Hey, I'm resolving the poll. They said it couldn't be done. They said I'd never do it. I'm doing it. Who will finish higher in the World Driver Championship? Tonight's poll was between Russell and Antonelli. 33% of you think Russell will finish higher than Antonelli in the World Driver Championship, and 67% of you feel that Antonelli will finish higher than Russell. That is the close of tonight's poll. And by the way, if you're watching for the first time, don't be a stranger. Subscribe to the channel, get in the chat, say hello, introduce yourself. Best Formula One community on the internet. Tell us where you're watching from. Get involved in the polls. Get involved in our daily live news discussions. And also make sure you've got the bell all icon ticked so you don't miss any of our other content. We've got watch-alongs, breaking news stories, videos. Be part of it all and support the channel as best as you can. So yeah, it's been a good show tonight. And Jim says, join Discord. Get on our Discord. The link's in the description. Follow us on Twitter. Follow us on Instagram. Follow us on TikTok. Get involved in all of it. Become active. You are very, very welcome here. Just make sure I've not missed any super chats. No, I haven't. Thank you so much for all your super chats tonight. All of your main chats. Brilliant. Really good show tonight. Really enjoyed it. Thank you so much to everyone who's been a part of it and everyone that got involved. I will be back same time tomorrow. Smash a like on the video before you go. I'll be back same time tomorrow at 7:30 GMT. Look out for some breaking news tomorrow. There might be some. And I'll see you all tomorrow night. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Ta-ta.